Hi, I'm Steve.
Forget about AI. Ready to face the music now.
What makes Pranav tick?
The largest design team probably in Southeast Asia. The relevant nudges and hooks.
Grilling me a lot on the one call we have been in 10 years.
One of the hardest parts of our transformation because they're very simple. It's multiplication and it's compounding.
Diversity of outcomes.
I think the winners are the ones who are...
I think you heard the emotions of a lot of fintechs out there
who are not yet your customers.
You've done your research. They themselves have not been able to replicate it outside. So building a stable base of CASA, started many initiatives, scaled many of them. All right, buzzword alert.
AI needs to tell us how to be human now.
Crystal ball, just going to throw some questions at you.
AI can take away a lot of the toil. There's no band-aids getting identity sorted out.
Size and scale matters more than it did a few years ago. So
probably the regulators can play a leadership role.
If you're not moving fast, you're not moving. Welcome back to part 2 of Vantage Point by DigiJanus. We are still with Pranav Seth. He's sharing his insights into digital transformation, humanized banking. If you've not seen those, please go and see part 1. On this part of the episode, we are actually going to go more deeper into the AI aspects of what he's doing. And, he's talked about hyper-personalization, cognitive banking, decisioning on risk, engagement, etc. And then we'll end up the episode with, a few more questions coming out from our good friend Steve, who's going to grill you. We call it the final round, so that for those who don't know Pranav, absolutely amazing trajectory. He was in consulting, the highest calling of mankind. Chose to come into banking, and where we are now, asking him all the questions. So Pranav, welcome back. And there are so many times I see you talking about hyper-personalization, cognitive banking. These topics are like Web3. Nobody really knows what it is.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own definition. So let's start. Why don't you define hyper-personalization and cognitive banking? Go.
All right, buzzword alerts.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I think we love buzzwords, right?
Yes.
I think it keeps us engaged. I think the reality of the matter is that I think the holy grail or the North Star that we are all chasing, is to create experiences that really, really, are contextual, that are relevant, and useful for our customers, at the time when they're receptive about it. They're delivered in a manner that is, cuts through all the noise that they are exposed to in their day-to-day digital lives, right? All the data deluge coming their way, and find resonance, either in their heart or their brain,
Yeah.
right? And get them to act on important things.
Yeah.
Right? Now, as, technology has evolved over the last few years, right? A few decades, right? I think things have evolved on what is the art of possible within that. Starting from, probably, campaign by, segmentation-based campaigns to, cookie-based personalization a little bit, right? To a stage where we are at where, I think many banks have, the next best offers, next best actions, next best offerings, engagements, various models. We look at the customer holistically and then say, what is the best action? Whether even if it's not about a sale, if it is about, even servicing the customer better, your card got stuck, I preemptively tell you that, your card got stuck at ATM, don't worry about it. So those kind of things have happened. But again, most of that stuff, is still not reached, I would say, the segment of one, right? Where you really feel that every message that comes to you, right, was extremely personal. And there was very few messages that you felt, okay, a little bit off. I don't think any bank has reached that stage. And that to me, is what I call, in my definition, is hyper-personalization, that where the ratio of messages that are engagement, nudges, stuff that's sent to the customers, the number of things that do not resonate reduces significantly.
Yeah.
Whether it's one-to-one or whether it's one to a smaller set of people, I think that's just, semantics. Now, as you start talking about AI and what the new technologies in AI is not new. I think it's a continuum. It's just the new Gen AI, which is creating the buzz again, right? So what's new is that we are able to understand the voice the tones, the sentiments in a way much, much better than before. Right, it's much more real time. And in languages like in Vietnamese, earlier all these models used to take ages to understand and still were not perfect. Right, now the models are extremely, responsive to even languages like Vietnamese. Right, so that allows us to bring in the second element, which is the sentiment, the emotions of the customer.
Yeah.
Right. While you're dealing with the contact center. I mean, yesterday I was talking to somebody and she was telling me that, somebody is using AI in a insurance call center where it's all young people manning the calls, but they're talking to women who are talking about pregnancy insurance, are, stressed. And these guys could not relate to these, the customer. And the AI was picking up stress signals from the customer's voice and prompting the agent to act in a different manner. Right now, this to me becomes cognitive banking, right? Whether it is in the, a human assisted channel, right? Or we can create the same in a digital channel. So bringing the heart, mind, right? The sentiment, the brain together, I think that to me would be the holy grail. And that's what I call cognitive.
Amazing answer on hyper-personalization, cognitive banking. Your answer gave me a paradox.
Yeah.
So now we need AI, artificial intelligence, to supplement humans so that they can be more human.
Yeah.
What a paradox we have landed ourselves into. And Steve is going to talk to you about humans, so I will leave this part to him. But that is like, I was listening and I'm like, really? As, an industry, as a civilization, we are at a point where AI needs to tell us how to be human now.
I think that's a topic that fascinates me no end.
Yes.
Right. I think I believe that it is not that we are not human.
Yeah.
I think the pressures of day to day, right? Either let's talk banking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm a young agent. Right. I need to understand customer need. I need to do customer empathy. I need to understand all the regulations. I need to understand what I can say, what I will go to jail if I say, right, etc., etc. And then I have the process, in front of me to serve this customer. I'll have to go through, hundreds of, hundreds is a bad word, but fields that I need to might need to fill in. Hopefully not. But I think this toil, this pressure, and sometimes the agent KPIs, right? Your KPI is to serve the maximum number of calls in an hour or to cross-sell certain products. Right now, if you put all these pressures together, sometimes you can't help but act like a robot. You just want to get it done because the pressure is too strong in the society. So I think that's where I believe that, AI can take away a lot of the toil, can be an assistant, a voice that says, hey, I've taken care of some of these mundane issues, and now I aid you to be who you are, a human, right? And really relate to the customer and give you nudges that, hey, this is what I pick up. Be your agent, your co-pilot.
Amazing. Now let's dive deeper into this. This is going to like peel off like an onion, right? First part is a lot of people are bringing AI and cognitive banking so that they can increase the engagement with the app. You guys are, I think, based on a survey by a very large consulting firm, you are over 50 engagements a month.
Yeah.
Why is the financial industry so fascinated with making their customers log in again and again?
I think the customers are logging again and again because I think as, commerce has gotten digitized, day-to-day commerce, right? I think if you come to Vietnam, right, every store, there's a QR code, right? So if you are walking around and doing your day-to-day business, you will be touching the app multiple times. Right. So if you have a primary banking relationship with us. And so I think, actually when I saw the number 50 interactions per month by a customer, I actually didn't believe it. Right. I double checked the data, triple checked. Finally, it is true. So I think now the question is that as the engagement with the bank has moved primarily to this channel, right? And many times in a situation where it is, very quick, right? You want to get done, right? And the main purpose is the transaction confirmation. How do you use some of these interactions to really talk about the things that should matter to the customer, that matter to us, in terms of increasing the lifetime value of the customer. And probably, again, a lot of the research that we have worked and I've talked about before is sometimes the customers, have financial needs, but they don't spend the time to, really dig deep into them. And we have enough data to actually trigger them on that journey.
Yeah.
So how do we leverage each of these interactions to do the right thing for the customer and for the business? So that's why it's important.
Okay, and great answer. And you went into this when you had the chat with Steve as well. Pranav, it is a very fascinating discussion with you right now. I meet banking folks very often, as part of the day job, as part of this. A lot of times you go and talk to bankers. You're like, our infrastructure is not ready. We cannot do this POC because data pipe is not ready now. I need to do this. You are sitting here talking about AI, hyper-personalization, AI decisioning, risk decisioning, engagement, etc. What have you done differently from day one that you have put Techcom in this leading position that today you are talking about this while some of your competitors are talking about how to get the data silo sorted out?
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to, going after some of the fundamental issues and fixing them at source. There's no band-aids possible. You have to fix some of the back-end infrastructure, which I've talked about.
Yep.
And I think that has been, I would say, a 2.5, 3 years journey, right, of getting all of those things in place, right? And then let's be honest, right? It's not that it's a magic wand, right? Even now, I think we still sometimes struggle with, as we bring in new SaaS solutions, etc., how do we avoid data fragmentation? How do we get the right signals between, back to our brain? I think those challenges still, day to day come up.
Yeah.
But I think at least you have enough clean, the decisioning, as well, again, the MarTech stack, right? The engagement stack that helps you pipe these signals, and an app that can take that and present it in a, using nudge architectures,
Yep.
or in a way that can really engage the customer. So I think these fundamental building blocks, again, learned the hard way in my previous experience, in
Yep.
my management team's previous experiences. I think being razor sharp about fixing these things, I think we're in a pretty comfortable position.
If you could give one advice to all those banks, financial institutions who are lagging transformation right now, who are 4, 5, 6 years behind Techcom,
Yeah.
what would be your one advice, one thing they should do and one thing they should not do?
I think no small measures, right? I think as you will move to new technologies, you'll face new problems.
Yeah.
So it's always good to face new problems rather than trying to cry over, old problems. So I think the first thing it would be, really, really, helping the, if you are in a, middle management or junior management role, then helping, your senior management understand that, bring in people from outside, bring in, get them to listen to DigiJanus.
Thank you. That is the best advice on 3 seasons, 20 episode, best advice ever.
I think, and, if you're in the management, really, really convince your board that on the need for this, right? Now, that's easier said than done, right? So, and again, I'm sure all the senior managers know various ways to approach that problem. But if that's not done, and I think you're trying to cope up with a lot of these issues, right? The energy spent by the entire organization is probably on the wrong issues.
Yeah.
Right. I think let them solve issues on fine-tuning the models, on just saying that, hey, only 5 sets of data are not available. Let me take a sprint to get them in.
Yeah.
Right. So I think those are much happier problems to solve rather than, being completely stuck.
Great advice. And I am hoping people who are listening to you would, heed to your advice.
Maybe I'll put in some fear, right? I think, now's the time to act, right?
Yes.
I think, there's always a fear of somebody else doing this so much better, and the scale of these investments and doing this over time can create significant, knowledge, institutional knowledge that's hard to replicate. And trying to reclaim scale back in banking is hard.
Yeah, and I think the fear or the risk is very real.
Yeah.
In my day job, I work, with a financial institution, and And if you're not moving fast, you're not moving.
Yeah.
Period. That is how fast some of the guys are moving. As that is how fast. Like, I can't believe I'm sitting here in 2024, and I've been doing this for 3-4 years, and I am having conversations with you about all of this, and another bank which is tech-led bank also. They're talking about how to get pilots going. So it is the diversity of outcomes would be so large that you wouldn't be able to recognize how these two banks were even in the were once considered peers. So it is absolutely amazing how AI would lead this and stuff. So great answer. Let's get into the next question. Now we're going to get into a little bit of a controversial part of AI. This is my personal opinion. You look at any kind of social media which is very AI driven. It is very easy to get into echo chambers.
Yeah.
Hyper-personalization. Now let's talk about hyper-personalization in investments. You have built your model around what I'm currently invested in. Let's say I'm a big FANG fan, and you see that as a trend. You look at what I'm looking into, and you make recommendation based on that.
Yeah.
You are putting me in an echo chamber now, which can be concentration risk.
Yeah.
Talk us through how real is this problem? How are you managing it? And and then we'll go into another problem that is waiting for you now.
So, Laksh, I would love to have that problem, right? I don't think they're there yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think any bank is there yet, right? So, I think the echo chamber problem, right? I think is apparent in this. If you watch Social Dilemma or any of these things, right? It is because every individual is so unique, and the social platforms have such diverse, content, right, that they could actually be much more precise than who we are and what we are able to do, right? So I don't think we are at that stage, even if you're talking about wealth management, right? In various experiences that I have had, right? First of all, as a bank, you will always first overlay the rules as well, right? Or you will take the AI, and we are not doing that yet right now.
Yeah.
Let's be on that.
Let's talk about a future state. That is
Future
good,
state, right? So I think the way it will need to be built is that the output. So first of all, the content has to be there,
Yeah.
right? A varied amount of content that can engage a diverse set of people. So whether you syndicate that content or work with partners or you have an own research team doing that, and that's a problem that in my previous experience we have tried to tackle and solve. But it is a huge issue to get the right content of that quality that you believe your advisors will give, right? Because it's not just user-generated content we are talking about, right? So I think that is one issue. The second is that obviously, when you will say use some decision, there will be always, rule-based. There is always going to be tests, right?
Yeah.
Check against regulation, etc. And that will need to be built into the models.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't think any bank is going to go out and do something which is purely non-validated. Most banks, like our bank, has a committee that will review every model that's going in.
Okay.
Right, and if they don't follow the certain rules, there's no way you can put them into production.
Right.
And specifically with Gen AI, I think this will be the scale productionization challenges that all of us are grappling with, and will take some time to solve.
This is where I love banking and financial industry. There is always a balance of regulation.
Yeah.
And this is where I feel always when somebody says banking is benchmarked against big tech, I'm like, this is not a fair comparison. Like, if you have to really benchmark banks, do it with the pharma industry, it is very close to the amount of regulation that banks go through. We are looking at regulatory oversight and obviously ethical AI as a very important aspect of what we just discussed. It is so hard for regulators to keep up. Obviously they're balancing so many different things, not criticizing them. Yeah. What 2 or 3 different things could regulators do? If a regulator was listening, what would be your advice to a regulator on how do they even keep up with these issues?
I think, my first question, or not advice, would be a request, right? I think it's about getting identity sorted out, right? I think forget about AI, forget about all of the other things.
Yeah.
I think the most critical factor for growth in digital commerce, digital banking is authentic identity online, right?
Yeah.
And I think any country who has done that well, Singapore, India, Estonia, and now Vietnam starting to do that, right? I think you see an explosive growth in digital banking, right? Because I think there's too much of press and narrative going on anonymity and blockchain and cryptocurrency. I think a lot more focus needs to go on authenticity, identity, and establishing that. And I think regulators have to play a very, very important role, in establishing that. Then second request that I would have would be around data, right? So I think, again, I take the example of what's happening with the SyncPass here, getting the data available and consent-based movement of data, similar initiatives in Vietnam. I think that needs to be expanded a lot more on covering various information types, and specifically on the corporate banking side. I think that data set is still probably can be refined much more so that, the quality of services can be improved massively. So I think those those 2 points to me are fundamental enablers that I think government and regulators are enabling that can change the trajectory of banking inclusion, and hopefully GDP for the country. So sorry for that aside, but I'm very passionate about that.
No, but that is a very, very good answer. Please keep going.
Because I think sometimes we just get stuck with the flashy, right? And I think specifically, let's say Gen AI applications, right? I think right now every bank is cautious itself to try it internally, right? Before making a kind of a Gen AI, kind of an agent talk directly to the customer. You are not seeing that. And I think there's just caution because we have already enough, I would say, guardrails. So talk about risk, right? You need to explain, how you did the risk decisioning. So I think there is enough, regulation already, right? And I think we should stick with those. And as, maybe best practices on how to manage these models, how to explain, I think that is where probably the regulators can play a leadership role and enable the institutes, enable the industry to innovate. I think some countries I have seen, probably not so much in Asia, where the moment you start doing a very restrictive approach, I think that is, to me, kind of losing competitive advantage for the nation.
Yeah.
Right. With that aside,
it is. And Pranav, that is a beautiful answer. And it also brings out the paradox that a regulator is in.
Yeah.
Protect the end customer and still be innovative. And you have to always keep balancing these two or three different, aspects of it. Be innovative. Support banking, protect the end customer, and you have to always keep balancing this. And as you mentioned, some of the countries are doing it really, really well, and it becomes a competitive advantage. And you're seeing, Singapore, India, Vietnam now growing on the digital and the fintech infrastructure, growing phenomenally, right? So great. We have had you for a very long time. Thank you for your patience. Couple of questions.
Okay.
Cognitive banking, we talked about a use case, etc. Why should a customer be okay with sharing their data so that you can build your models for cognitive banking?
It's a brilliant question. I think it's a question that, probably for the last 10, 15 years I've been in banking, every time we've tried to apply data, we've had the same question. When we first architecture, we applied maybe close to 12 years ago.
Yeah.
We were very, very afraid the moment we start showing your aggregated data and start saying that based on this, you should be doing this. We were very afraid of customer backlash. And it did not happen. And I think the lessons from that is, first of all, there has to be a really, really solid value exchange, right? If you are perceived, right, to be using the data to, spam the customers, if you're using this data to, pester them, right, and it's not relevant, then I think, it raises concerns, right? Second, so fit for purpose, I'm talking to the customer for banking based on their financial data. They expect the bank to be doing that, right? Consent-based, right? So if you think that this is getting a little bit, uncomfortable, you need to get consent, right? And specifically, if there is any sharing of data between ecosystem partners, right, I think it really needs to be consent-based. So, for example, right now for credit, right, we ask the customers, if you want to get faster credit, we can get some data from here. Please, authenticate using this OTP, and it clearly states so. So,
Right.
helping the customers understand what is happening, taking their consent, I think is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing which I believe will get more and more important is being transparent about even that if something has been generated by Gen AI or any of these things, if, like my Asima of eyes, I want to see that, we have a digital voice channel, which is, very human in like and very personal, then we need to disclose that this is agent, even if, technology wise right now, many people cannot differentiate. So I think we need to be upfront in disclosing, you're talking to a human, you're talking to a machine, how your data is being used, how it is being shared, and finally creating value for the customer based on the use case. Yeah.
So you are saying when they see value is when they will be okay with, letting you use the data. That is how they will derive comfort from you using the data for AI models, etc.
As long as it's, within that context, they can understand. If they feel that this data, or if you do something which this data goes out and somebody else then uses this data to talk to them, I think that is probably needs to be managed. Should not happen most of the times, but if there are use cases, then it needs to be very transparent and very consent driven.
So last two questions. Steve led you easy. I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And obviously,
I'm from the Whiplash Club, right? So making life hard for you, you make life hard for me.
No, we have not done that.
Right.
There is a separate format for that. We'll invite you next year for that. So you're a big believer in AI.
Yeah.
But I have a little contrarian view. I believe in AI. I think it is transformational. But I also think there is a huge hype cycle going on around this. Let's look 5 years forward.
Yeah.
How much of this AI hype will survive? What do you think is most realistic view of AI in 5 years?
Okay, now you're putting me in a spot. I think it's easy to beat the drum, right?
Yeah.
I agree, and I think it's so it's probably one of the few technologies in my career where I have always been bullish on. So even when I was in my previous role, I think if you look at my interviews, I've always said this is one area where I'm bullish on. I think if you think the technology is always right, what you expect this year will generally not happen, but over 5 years, probably much more will happen. And the same, I believe, for AI, right? I think the agent experience, first of all, should be transformed.
Yeah.
Right. And I know a lot of banks, I know we are trying to work on that, right, as well, on how do we enable the agents to be more human, right, and assist them, right, or what we call, get them an exoskeleton and make them superhuman.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's something which is already on the cards. Sentiment analysis, I think, will be in, right. I dream that I think some sort of agentic AI, use cases take place. Yep. I think that would be my hope, but I would not bet on that.
Okay, and great answer. We are going to keep this clip for 5 years, and when you log back in 2029, and you will see this tag to your name. And last question: one thing you would change in the financial industry, no holds bar.
What I would like to change, other than the ecosystem changes that I talked about in terms of digital enablement of, identity, shared data, I think digitization of SMEs is probably my dream.
Yeah.
Right. I would like businesses get more digital, right? And the key reason behind that is, it helps us to be more efficient, more human. We can look at the data, give you credit, rather than asking you to fill up gazillion forms. And that is a stumbling block in many economies, right? And there's a concerted need by government. I like the SME startup program here, right? I think we need to do a lot more of that, regionally and globally. So yeah, I think it's more of a dream for the ecosystem, right? That enables banks to be more digital rather than all the things that I mentioned inside the bank.
And, a perfect answer for a very engaging and very insightful. Thank you for being so candid. Before you go, I will make a prediction today.
All right.
In next 5 years, we will have at least a few financial institutions where the CEO will not be from the front office, but the chief digital officer. So I would obviously love to see you take that position and, prove this trend right. And because this has been such an engaging conversation, it has convinced me that if you are not digital, you are no longer relevant. And if you're not going aggressively on the path of AI, digitization, and, your customers are going to be ruthless and unforgiving. So thank you for bringing all this enlightenment to me and Steve. But I do need to hand you over to Steve, who is going to ask you a lot of questions. Steve, you are on now. Okay.
Welcome back. I'm Steve, and I'm again pleased to speak with Pranav in the final section of the DigiJanus conversation with Pranav Seth of Techcombank. Pranav, it's been a really interesting conversation. Thank you very much for that. Pranav, in terms of external models and benchmarking, who do you look at least as a class? Do you look primarily at banking apps, or do you look at social media as well in terms of deciding what's interesting, what can be applied, and maybe what you can do better?
I think that's a fascinating question, right? I think rather than looking at these benchmarks, I think there are probably few concepts which have been employed by various industries that kind of really help me, anchor where we are heading, right? So I think the social media companies, right, have employed the hook methodology, and I think I saw Nir Eyal on one of your podcasts before. Right, I think they have employed it to perfection, right? Where you're getting people engaged and getting them hooked on for the next content, etc. So I think for me to be able to, as a bank, to be able to use the interactions that we have with our customers digitally to engage with the relevant content, the relevant nudges and hooks, right, that bring customers to investigate some of the financial questions that they should be thinking about. I think that's something which I really, really aspire for. Secondly, I think we are a bank. We are in the business of trust. We are not in the business of eyeballs like many other industries. So for us, how do we increase the trust is in every interaction is extremely important to me. And I think for that, where I look inspiration from is the whole nudge theory by Richard Thaler, right, on choice architectures. That when you have, let's say, got somebody's attention, right, how do you use that attention to help them think about tough questions, right, about choices that they might have been, putting off, right, and make them think about. So let me make it a little bit real, right? So when we are, let's say somebody has every month, the person is increasing the balance on their current accounts, right? So how do we present this information to them in an engaging manner that kind of makes them think that, are they really optimizing the money that they already have, right? How do we show them, the potential of, either putting it in, a very safe instrument, that would do recurring benefits, right? To set up saving goals for dreams or saving goals that earn a little bit higher interest rate and helps them get to certain goals. How do we tell them, about opportunities, in, let's say we have a sweep product which optimizes, your money, every time it hits a certain balance, it sweeps it into a high yielding product. Right. So how do we nudge that and get them to a decision where we offer them these kind of choices and decisions, leave it to the customer of how to think about it? Because the one thing I've realized is that most people want to do financial planning, even for small things, but, they always put it off. And that's a research applicable to every country that you would take a look at. That's just basic human nature. I think our job as a bank is to apply the digital technologies, the human, I would say, understanding, right, to really, really crack this problem of deferring these tough questions, tough decisions, and help make people look at these options.
So delivering a social good.
I think, it is a social good, but it has to make money for us at the end, right? So I think, we have to be clear that we are, commercial organization, right? And the key part is that doing good for the customer, right, will lead to good business. And I think that's concept that we applied, at least I applied in my previous role as well, where we told people that, hey, sometimes this credit card might not be the best thing for you, right? And we put that as disclaimers upfront on that. If we knew that, the person has a propensity to, overspend beyond the means, right? I think we put it very, very clearly in the descriptions and all that. Please be very careful about using this.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to talk about customer acquisition, if we could, and the transformation that's underway at Techcombank, which I believe you're in. At the end of 23, you were in year 3 of 5, and the customer acquisition numbers are profound. You, I believe in, even with COVID, you in 21, 22 were bringing on about 1.2 million new customers.
Yeah.
In 2023, as the transformation really took hold, that 1.2 million became 2.6 million.
Yeah.
And obviously, those are numbers that any business would be keen to deliver. So can you talk about how you connect with people who are not yet your customers?
Yeah. You've done your research. I think, yes, customer acquisition growth, I think, is a key driver for us, right? I think as we are looking to expand our reach to a much broader base of the Vietnamese customers. And I think we can do that because of all the investments we've made over the past 3 years, which allow us to, efficiently serve even, customers with less complex wallet sizes, smaller wallet sizes, or less complex wallet needs. And I think acquiring customers in Vietnam, right, with quality, I think is an art, right? I would say this has been achieved primarily by using again both the heart and the mind, pulling at both the heart and the mind of our customers, right? Acquisition is driven by what customers perceive you to be, right, as a brand. So I think positioning Techcombank as a brand that is there to help you achieve more with your business, achieve more with your objectives. And that's shown by the advances that we are making, by the leaps and bounds by which we are creating new services, digitally advanced services. We are making it very clear for our customers. Appealing to the hearts by saying that, hey, we have very, I would say, innovative products that kind of help you sweep, I mentioned this before, sweep your balances from a low interest bearing account into a high bearing account without locking your money, right? Every time we do that, I think we are potentially losing out on some money that we could have made, on the margin we could have made. But I think we believe it's the right thing for the customers to do and not worry about them making the decision. So I think that kind of product is getting us great mileage. We call it the auto earner. Right. On the other hand, there are sometimes very simple things. A lucky account number, right? I think culturally, choosing the right number can, make you feel much better about how you are dealing with your customers as your business, giving that number. So I think those few simple things kind of help us really grow. The other thing which I would like to mention is I think what digital has also allowed us to do is go beyond our digital acquisition, go beyond in digitally enabling our frontline, right? But also work with our partners, right? So we are working with one of the biggest supermarkets in Vietnam, where, we were able to, with the simple QR code, get customers to sign up for Techcombank if they were buying stuff from that, supermarket regularly, right? So expanding the channels, expanding the segments that we can serve, efficiently, is been a core, I would say, objective of the digital transformation.
Great, thank you. I'd like to put the focus on your colleagues and how they are enabled with the digital transformation that's underway. Some of the statistics that really catch one's attention in the 2023 annual report is the increase in lead generation, the increase in deal closing that's been enabled by the digital transformation. So could you talk about the work that you do in terms of enabling your fellow colleagues to succeed in what they're doing? And also, how much of your focus is on the external customer versus enabling fellow employees?
Yeah, I think organizationally, there's someone else looking at that, right, on the internal enablement, right? But the infrastructure that we are building on the data side, right, the infrastructure that we are building, building serves across channels.
Yes.
The identification of a customer need, it could happen, while the customer is sitting, in front of a relationship manager, an agent, right? Or it could happen, while the person is interacting digitally. All the data, I think we've cut down all the silos, right? And the brain, what we call the brain, right, is where the decisions are being made on what kind of product or the next kind of offering that we should be talking to the customer about. And I think that, and there's a lot of orchestration between the online to the offline and the offline to the online world, right? Because when you're talking about certain complex products, I think it is all about that, getting that journey right, as fast as you can, making sure that the handover from one channel to the other happens as effectively as possible. Right. So I think that's the data is common. The decisioning is common. I think on the customer facing, we introduced a new CRM system, right, which is kind of enabling the frontline to interact with the customers.
Okay. Maybe we can stick with that. There's a number of large and well-known banks that are quite clear that to the greatest extent possible, they would like to develop technology that will be used by the staff internally. Techcom publicly talks about the partnerships that it has with AWS, with Kyriba, with Salesforce, and with others. And yet you have already mentioned that you also have one of the largest team of data scientists in banking in Southeast Asia, and you have a large development team. So what's the algorithm that you use to determine what gets worked internally versus where you look to partner with someone outside?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question, right? I think we have to leverage the best of the best, right? To get to the time to markets that we are talking about, right? So as you rightly said, I think we are using Salesforce, we are using Adobe, we are using Databricks, we are on AWS, right? We are using Backbase, right? I think what we have tried to do is where we believe that there is significant competitive advantage, that needs to be done by us. Right. So by that, I mean the customer engagement, right? So how we use, let's say, a platform like Backbase, but how do we customize each screen based on our insights about the customer is critical for us. So while we use the beautiful middleware and the interaction models as an accelerator, but the final customer experience is designed in our labs by our developers, right? Last to the damn pixel, last pixel. The other side is, creating our own intelligence. Right. I think even while we are going with these SaaS solutions, I think there's a conscious architectural choice that we need to get the key data back. Right. And we need to get into our data lake. We need to get it to our data brain, right, which then is analyzing and, creating the insights on credit, on risk, on, engagement. I think this is probably one of the hardest parts of our transformation because many of these SaaS solutions sometimes require us to have data in them and move data to them. And as we are growing and evolving, I think we are working with these partners to say that how do we make sure that we can work on this in a federated manner, right? How do we make sure that our data architecture remains clean? Our decision engine, the decision science, sticks with us, because that, we believe, at the end of the day, is the soul of what we do.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. One last maybe general question, and then we'll move into the crystal ball section.
I like it.
Question, do network effects matter in banking? And if so, one of the interesting items that we hear about Techcombank is that it is likely maybe 3 years ahead of competition in terms of your technology stack. So with network effects in mind, are there any non-financial, of course, but any predictions you can make in terms of where you see the potential of the organization to go?
I think the network effect, the flywheel, probably is most important internally, right? I think putting the infrastructure in, putting these technology in, right, is the starting point. Getting the right talent in, right, which we have invested in and brought in from all over the world, right? And that, to me, is the flywheel, is the not the network, but the flywheel effect.
Okay.
I think that it will create that advantage over the next few years. So if you see my presentation recently to the analyst, so I said it's very simple. It's multiplication and it's compounding, right? The multiplication of the data, digital and talent that we have, and compound it, run it over and over again. So the way we are doing engagement, it's a 2-week sprint. The way we are looking at our credit models, it's again a few week sprint, right? And we are trying to continuously improve these things with the data insights that we have, with the right people that we have, and get better over and over and over again. Right. And that, to me, is, what I call sustainable advantage. Right. And it's going to be really, really hard for anyone to follow.
Fantastic. Thank you. Crystal ball, just going to throw some questions at you and get your initial thoughts, if I may. Open source or the frontier models? Which do you see succeeding as we go forward?
I think that is truly crystal balling, right? I think right now we are experimenting with both, right? I think both have their advantages, disadvantages. I think the open source models obviously have had a large set of data, right? Sometimes you don't know what kind of data, right? But we do believe that there are certain applications where, voice and this, where, some of these things, it's better to be open sourced, right? But then there are other areas where, and again, if it's, we can take those open source and customize it to what we want, right? It takes time, but it's possible. So there's some sort of flexibility, less support, but if we have the engineering skills, we can do that. If we are talking about proprietary models developed either by partners or something, right? So again, we have much better control, right? I mean, as we are getting into this world of synthetic content and all that stuff, right? It is important that we know that what the model has been trained on, right, is something that is respectable, right, and legally true. So I think we are experimenting with both. In certain areas, we are saying that, hey, we will stick with some of these proprietary models by our partners, right? And sometimes we will, use the open source. Where it will end, who will have the ultimate power? Right. If I knew that, I would be, going heavy in the market right now.
Okay. Well, and that leads to my next question. Does big tech eventually become a direct competitor? And if so, when?
I think that's a fascinating question, right? I think you could say that, hey, there's a general purpose AI, by one of these big guys who understand everything about the customer, right? And would potentially also help you do financial services. Right. I don't think that is the worldview that I subscribe to. Right. I think there is still a need for specialization. Right. There is still a need for being, really, really masters of making sure that you are AML, compliance, etc. There's an element of fine tuning your products, to the local needs. So probably, if I do my crystal ball, I do believe that there could be an agentic AI world where, a lot of these companies might have their own intelligence, right? Agents, But I would like to have, Techcombank AI agent working alongside with them, talking to the agents, talking to each other, exchanging information and really creating a better solution for the customer. So to make it real, right? So let's say, and again, I don't know whether this is what will be there in the new release of Apple Intelligence, right? How does Apple Intelligence, will it be able to talk to, a banking intelligence, right? And how will it be able to exchange data? So those are the things which I am looking forward to see how the ecosystem evolves. I think our vision would be that we are the AI agent that specializes in finance. We are the AI agent that knows all the banking data behind the person, right? Which kind of, money is what defines us of how we use our money, right? So we have that intelligence and how we use that in a responsible manner, not just sharing the data with everyone, but sharing in or providing the right solution to the customer by understanding more about the customers, working with others.
Thank you. The race gets faster every day, every year. How long do you think banks have to get off of their legacy software?
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned that you're already 70% of the cloud, which is well beyond your peers. But
I think there are certain things which are, I would say, essential. Right. So breaking down that legacy, silos, the legacy infrastructure probably is an imperative. I mean, I believe that banks will live for a very long time. So definitely there will be winners and losers within the banks, right? And definitely I am of a strong belief that I think the winners are the ones who are taking that clear stance that if they need to succeed, if they need to make sure that nobody comes and takes away the core fundamental of their business, they need to really transform their legacy infrastructure. If they've not done so far, they really need to invest in data, and they really need to invest in the digital engagement that was required, that'll be required to serve the customers. Anyone who's not taking these big bets in an extremely aggressive manner, I think, in my view, will have challenges along the way.
Okay, thank you. 2 2030 questions. What does banking look like in 2030?
I think banking should look significantly different by 2030. And I think the most fundamental shift starts from the customer. Banking is an enabler of, customers' goals, aspirations. Yep. We like to break it down on the consumer side. I think we have similar classification on the business side, but on the consumer side, it is, today, right? How do you maximize and enjoy your money today, right? It is about one day you want to set up your own business. It's about one day you want to send your kid to, a beautiful college, right? Or about a rainy day. You want to prepare for, some exigencies for family, for something. I think the banks more and more will need to focus on solving those, right? While providing the underlying products for that, right? And that will require working not just, alone, but with various people in the ecosystem, right? So talking like what we do right now on the housing side, right? How do we how we have moved from selling a mortgage to helping you get your dream home while embedding the finance in it. Similar things, I believe, should happen, when we are talking about health, about insurance, about like what we are doing on loyalty right now, helping you enjoy your money. There'll probably a lot more involvement into the ecosystem, embedding into the merchant bases, or even having your own, merchant loyalty platforms. So I think there's going to be a lot more of this meshing things together, right, to create end-to-end journeys. And something that has been talked about for a very long time, right? I still believe that this will happen, and it should happen in the next few years.
Okay.
Second thing is AI. I have already talked about Agentic AI, right?
Yep.
I believe that AI will drastically improve the experience for our customers, the knowledge. And again, we talked about cognitive banking as well. So not just about the hard data on what you have done on your finances, but also the sentiment, understanding how you're feeling at that time, right? I think bringing those together, working with Agentic, other AIs right? Putting it all together, I think that will create a really personalized one-to-one experience in my mind. And thirdly, I think which is more to do with the larger ecosystem that banks operate in, as the SMEs that we work with, as the government that we rely on for KYC, I think the digitization pace on that is increasing rapidly, right? And I think that's a fundamental thing a prerequisite for us to serve our customers better. The more data that we have as they digitize their operations, the more data that we can validate with the government, we can create much better credit to the society, right? We as a bank, right, are responsible to ensure the right credit that fuels the growth of a country, of the society. With digitization of a lot of the operations of government, working together with them, I believe that we can create much better credit experiences.
Okay, thank you. With the development of generative AI and looking ahead to agentic AI, it feels like size and scale matters more than it did a few years ago. So any view in terms of the fintech space over the next 5 years?
I mean, I think I've never held the view that, it's a fintech versus the bank kind of a question, right? I do believe there is a need for fintechs to even come and innovate, right? Either work with the banks to say, how do they bring this vision alive, right? How do they help create this vision, right? Or you could be still a standalone, entity, right? Directly serving the customers on certain area where you find a way to beat the banks, right? I think there are solid examples of companies in the FX space, right, which have kind of really shaken up the banking industry and made them improve themselves while creating a market for themselves. So I believe that the pace, the change that is required is so much, right, that there's an opportunity for fintech to either directly engage with the customers on certain aspects or work with the banks. Innovation will need to be driven by both.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think in the interest of time, I'm not going to ask you the Eric Schmidt question, so I will close. This brings us to the close of this episode of DigiJanus. Pranav, it has been fascinating to hear your views and to learn from you in terms of how one of the leading banks in Southeast Asia, and in many ways the leading digital bank in Southeast Asia, is approaching serving its customers and developing its business. Thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you all the best for your continued success within Techcombank.
Thank you so much, Steve. The pleasure is all mine.